Hello everyone. Today's lecture is about globalization and the environmental impact of sectoral foreign direct investment. As you know, globalization is such a broad and vast topic. So in this lecture, I am going to discuss and summarize the article of Nadia Doytch and Merih Uctum. In this article they analyze the environmental impact of capital inflows and investigate the halo effect. What's halo effect? Pollution halo hypothesis argue that multinational companies through FDI transfer their greener technology to host country. Technology transfer might involve green technologies such as pollution abatement technologies. They show that studies relying only on firm level or aggregate data miss sectoral spillovers, and thus may lead to misleading conclusions about FDI. With globalization, extreme events are no longer rare and can hit industrialized and developing economies alike. For example, just as the financial crisis that originated in the United States has transformed into a global recession, the climate change that started a while ago is now being felt throughout the world at an ever-increasing rate. Globalization is blamed for degrading the environment through two channels. First, the pollution haven or race to the bottom. Second, the environmental Kuznets curve, EKC. Environmental Kuznets curve hypothesis. It claims that there exists an inverted U-shaped relationship between environmental degradation and income. However, are mitigated by the more recent literature, which revealed a halo effect. The effect of globalization on the environment is mostly analyzed via, first, the trade channel. Second, less so via the capital flows channel. Third, foreign direct investment. All the three effects can be triggered by multinational companies that invest in physical plants and equipment and contribute to production and growth in host countries, as well as affecting the environment. Climate change that started a while ago is now being felt throughout the world at an ever-increasing rate. The main difference is that, unlike recessions, a change in the climate may be irreversible. For businesses, especially those operating internationally, it is critical to know their impact on carbon emissions and to manage their risks. Businesses and investors are facing increasing restrictions and regulations from authorities forced to cut emissions. Managing climate-generated risk is becoming an important objective for companies, and therefore many businesses and insurers support clear measures and regulations. In this study, they propose to understand the impact of globalization on the host country's environment by examining the halo effect of FDI inflows. They also analyze how sector-specific FDI inflows impact pollution in the countries and test whether a halo effect is present. The contribution of this study show that various drawbacks that prevent establishing a clear relation between pollution and capital flows. First, most studies that examined the impact of globalization on the environment considered these effects separately, with a plethora of data and samples at the firm or country level, which makes it difficult to draw any consistent conclusion. Second, the adopted methodology is the time-averaged cross-section approach, which is inadequate to analyze a dynamic phenomenon such as greenhouse gas emissions with little or no reversion. Finally, idiosyncratic shocks to different sectors may outweigh regional shocks and conceal differences at the industry level, which could explain the reason behind the inconclusive results in the literature. The literature on the environmental impact of total FDI uses an aggregate measure, which conceals sectoral effects. They address these drawbacks by adopting a unified framework and a dynamic model that allows the analysis of all three effects over time. They show that results on the capital flow pollution nexus depend critically on the type of FDI flows and income distribution. First, they find a differential industry effect. Second, they uncover a striking income inequality effect. Third, they find that the EKC effect depends on the sector absorbing the FDI and, again, on the income level of the country. The evidence supports the EKC effect. For example, pollution decreases with economic development, in services in low-income countries and in manufacturing in high-income nations. The halo effect follows the literature examining the productivity spillovers from FDI at both firm and macroeconomic levels. A positive environmental impact is triggered if multinational corporations encourage the dissemination of environmentally clean technologies and management practices. This occurs when foreign firms only engage in contracts with environmentally responsible domestic counterparts, This may happen under shareholder pressure at an MNC or because of practices established by environmental regulations and standards of the MNC's home country. Economic growth leads to a shift in the mix of sectoral capital flows into and out of developing countries. FDI and GDP are instrumented, which makes them exogenous to pollution. Additional factors such as economic growth and exogenously imposed emission targets also lead to a shift in the mix of sectoral capital flows. They tested for the Kyoto Protocol with a dummy and found no significant effect. Kyoto Protocol is a protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, an international environmental treaty with the goal of stabilization of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Conceptual framework. Our approach is in the spirit of Markussen, 1995, extended to two imperfectly competitive firms operating in two countries. Domestic and foreign firms compete in both markets with heterogeneous products that are imperfect substitutes for each other. Each individual firm can affect the price of its own product in the market in which it is competing. So, each firm can choose whether to produce only domestically or to build plants in both countries and produce both locally and in the foreign country. They keep the model as simple as possible and abstain from any strategic considerations between firms or governments, or issues around abatement or spatial effects. Pollutions did at time T in country I depends on total production Q and on an exogenous component D. So, the total production in the host economy consists of the production of the domestic firm, which may or may not be a multinational, and the production of the foreign multinational firm. Total production in the host economy consists of the production of the domestic firm, which may or may not be a multinational, and the production of the foreign multinational firm. In this equation where X, XF are, respectively, the domestic production of the domestic firm and the local production of the foreign firm if it is a multinational, or its export to the domestic country if it is a foreign national firm. They consider the specific case where the foreign firm is a multinational firm producing both at home and in the host country and the domestic firm is a national firm that produces locally. The cost minimization of the domestic firm can be written as C equals WL plus RK plus TZ. Respectively, pollution produced by the domestic firm and the target or maximum allowable emission level for this firm. So they consider pollution as an input to the production process, but it could also be equivalently considered as a joint production technology. A multinational firm produces XF in the host country and rents it out to its local market at a cost of XF. To focus on the pollution produced in the host country, we will ignore the production activity of the multinational firm in its home country. Pollution equation of the form. Both plants contribute to the emissions by ZF in the host country and Z in the home country, where the firm faces similar target levels of emissions and output. So, where lowercase letters are the logs of the upper, by examining how capital flows directly affect pollution in a country, while controlling for the EKC effect. The methodology outlined below is designed to control for such biases. To assess the impact of FDI and growth on pollution in a form that is comparable to the empirical studies in the literature, we can transform EQ. 4, as follows. They use the GMM methodology. The generalized method of moments is a statistical method that combines observed economic data with the information in population moment conditions to produce estimates of the unknown parameters of this economic model, because it is more suitable for our purposes. Panel data is preferable to cross-sectional data because of the correlation between lag-dependent variables and the unobserved residual. Data and sources for the article. The data are yearly, cover many countries, span a long period from 1984 to 2011, and come from various sources. The key independent variables are disaggregated FDI flows as share of GDP denominated in current USD, foreign direct investment, FDI, flows are the net purchases and sales of domestic assets by foreigners in the corresponding year. In this article, FDI is defined as investment that reflects the objective of obtaining a lasting interest in an entity other than that of the investor. They use an income distribution country classification provided by the World Bank. They categorize all countries following the current World Bank income brackets for low, lower middle, upper middle, and high-income countries. They examine the impact on industry pollution of sectoral and aggregate FDI, given a set of control variables. Control variables, also known as controlled variables, are properties that researchers hold constant for all observations in an experiment. They find that poor countries' environment is degraded by capital inflows, while that of rich countries improves. So capital inflow here indicate a growing economy. Results in this article show substantial intersectoral differences that are not detectable in the aggregate data. They found that there is a weak evidence supporting the EKC hypothesis when inflows of investment are in the primary sector, services and at the aggregate level. Also the two other control variables, corruption and population density, are either insignificant or come with the wrong sign in the full regression results. In the Table 1 they displays the full regression results for aggregate and sectoral FDI for all countries. Results in aggregate, manufacturing and non-financial sectors suggest that flows into these industries degrade the environment in the host. The breakdown with time-varying income distribution will help to further disentangle these results. There is weak evidence supporting the EKC hypothesis when the inflows of investment are in the primary sector, services and at the aggregate level, rows 2, 3. The two other control variables, corruption and population density, are either insignificant or come with the wrong sign in the full regression results. As we will see below, signs and significance vary at the sectoral level. My question is, how does foreign direct investment affect pollution? Basically, when new capital-intensive technologies are less polluting and foreign capital reduces marginal costs, FDI may lead to pollution decrease with capital accumulation in the host country. In Table 2 we summarize the estimate of before across sectors and income distribution. The first panel in Table 2 reproduces the same results as row 6 in Table 1. Column 1 presents the breakdown of the impact of total FDI on the environment, according to income categories. The impact of total capital flows in the full sample on environmental degradation, first cell, column 1, is replicated only in one income level. The effect of total FDI on CO2 pollution. So here the evidence shows that FDI inflows deteriorate the environment in poorer countries, while they do not have the same harmful impact in wealthy countries. Results at the aggregate level support the view that capital flows to poorer countries and pollutes the environment. In Table 3 we present the EKC estimates according to the income distribution. The effect of primary sector FDI on CO2 pollution. Foreign direct investment, FDI, inflows to agriculture and mining improve air quality in high-income countries, but not in low and middle-income nations. Capital flows to these industries are clearly beneficial to the environment in those countries. Also, the evidence supports the halo hypothesis that FDI inflows in these industries bring clean technology into wealthy countries. The effect of manufacturing FDI on CO2 pollution. In the column 4, inflows of foreign direct investment, FDI, into low and high income countries significantly increase air pollution. Manufacturing FDI is the only type of investment flow that does not benefit the rich countries, according to the World Bank's latest Global Burden of Disease study. The effect of tertiary sector FDI on CO2 pollution. In rich countries, both financial and non-financial service FDI significantly benefit the environment by bringing in clean technology. Last panel, columns 6 and 7. A halo effect in services in the middle-income countries is strongly counteracted by a pollution haven effect in poorer countries. The harmful effect can be traced back to non-financial services. The results suggest that foreign investment inflows into manufacturing are most likely to increase pollution and refute the halo effect hypothesis. The picture with services is less straightforward and requires examination of the data by income level. The environment in poor countries is harmed by foreign direct investment, FDI, flows that use dirty technologies. In the middle-income countries, FDI inflows increase pollution in agriculture and mining but bring in environmentally friendly technology in the service industry, most likely in finance. By contrast, rich countries benefit from all types of FDI, with a significant effect in financial and non-financial services. The hypothesis that pollution worsens during the initial growth process followed by an improvement as incomes rise is not strongly supported by the data. So EKC is a phenomenon that appears mainly in poor and middle-income countries and is mostly inexistent in high-income countries. They found that FDI inflows into mining and services raise levels of CO significantly in host countries. The halo effect is visible in services FDI for SO2 and NO2 pollutants as well, especially in non-financial flows. Financial FDI contributes to a decline in NO2 but not CO pollution. Means that air pollution caused by particles other than CO2, such as SO2, sulfur dioxide, NO2, nitrogen dioxide, and CO, carbon monoxide. They examined if the Kyoto Protocol had any impact on the estimates and parameter stability. This could mean that the protocol has been ineffective, or that it did not have time to work through the estimated coefficients. The results were largely consistent, but with fewer significant coefficients for law and order. Finally, they find that the persistence of pollution is highly robust to income distribution. Control of corruption reduces pollution in poor countries if FDI flows into services, but not if it flows into manufacturing or services. The literature on the effect of globalization on the environment is ambiguous. This study tests the halo effect hypothesis, which argues that foreign direct investment is beneficial to host countries. When data is disaggregated at the income category level, this study shows that foreign investment benefits the environment in wealthy countries across industries. They have shown that studies of the relationship between economic growth and the environment often overlook the subtle characteristics of the data due to the complex interaction of sectoral flows with the environment. While the impact of FDI on the environment is uneven in general for different countries and largely depends on the strength of the environmental regulation and compliance, sometimes the relation between environmental regulation and economic activities requires the use of the pollution haven hypothesis.